When you disappear, the very first thing people feel is awareness. And I want to break this down because it's one of the most powerful lessons you can ever learn about human behavior. Awareness doesn't show up when you're constantly present, when you're always answering the calls, replying to the messages, showing up for favors, and being there no matter what. People slip into autopilot. They assume your presence is permanent, like air. They stop noticing the effort you put in. They stop appreciating the time you give. They stop seeing you as a choice and instead see you as a guarantee. And guarantees are rarely valued in the way they should be. But the moment you pull away, the moment you stop showing up on demand, the awareness hits. Suddenly, the air feels thinner. Suddenly, they're forced to notice the role you were playing all along. Think about it. When you have light in a room, you don't notice it. You just live, you move, you do what you need to do, and you expect the light to always be there. But when the power goes out, what's the first thing you feel? Awareness. You become instantly aware of how much you depended on that light. You stumble, you fumble, and you realize how much of your comfort came from something you never really thought about. That's exactly what happens when you disappear from someone's life. They may not have valued your presence when you were around, but the second you're gone, they can't help but feel the void. That awareness stings and it lingers. Awareness is uncomfortable because it forces people to confront reality. When you were always there, they could convince themselves that everything was fine. They could tell themselves they were treating you well enough. They could avoid looking in the mirror. But when you disappear, there's no escaping it. They become aware of their actions or their lack of actions. They become aware of the moments they brushed you off. They become aware of the times they failed to listen, failed to appreciate, failed to show up. It's like a spotlight gets turned on, and suddenly, every detail they ignored is illuminated. Here's the thing, though. Awareness doesn't just impact them, it impacts you too. Because when you step away, you also gain awareness. You finally see clearly how much energy you were giving away. You become aware of who actually reaches out when you're no longer chasing. You become aware of who values you for you and who only valued what you could provide. Disappearing has a way of stripping away illusions, both theirs and yours, and that kind of awareness is life-changing. Now, let's be real. This awareness doesn't always feel good at first. For them, it can feel like guilt. It can feel like regret. It can feel like the sharp sting of realizing they had something valuable and didn't care for it. For you, it can feel like loss, even anger, as you recognize the imbalance that was there all along. But awareness, no matter how uncomfortable, is always a gift. Because without awareness, there can be no growth, no change, no real respect. Think about the times in your own life when you didn't fully appreciate someone until they were gone. Maybe it was a friendship that faded because you didn't nurture it. Maybe it was a relationship you didn't fight hard enough for. Or maybe it was a person in your family you always assumed would be there until suddenly they weren't. What did you feel in those moments? That sharp, undeniable awareness of just how much they mattered. That's the exact same awareness others feel when you disappear. And here's the power in all of this. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your silence. The act of disappearing, of pulling your energy back, is enough to create awareness all on its own. Your silence is a louder teacher than your words ever could be. People might ignore your complaints, your explanations, your pleas for them to change, but they cannot ignore the empty space where you used to be. They cannot ignore the absence of your presence. This is why awareness is such a powerful first step in teaching people how to value you. Because the truth is, most people won't appreciate something until it's gone. That's human nature. But instead of letting that frustrate you, use it. Step back, create distance, let them feel it. And as they sit with the awareness of what they lost, you sit with the awareness of what you truly deserve. Both sides are learning, but the lesson is different. For them, it's a wake-up call. For you, it's clarity. When you disappear, you give people the gift of awareness. You force them to see what they refused to see before. And at the same time, you give yourself the gift of awareness too. Awareness of your worth, awareness of your boundaries, awareness of who belongs in your life and who doesn't. That's why disappearing isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's education. And the very first lesson taught when you step back is awareness, the kind that changes everything. When you disappear, one of the strongest emotions people feel is discomfort, and that discomfort quickly turns into reflection. It's human nature to avoid thinking deeply about our actions when everything feels familiar and predictable. As long as you're present, accessible, and always showing up, people don't have to stop and examine how they treat you. They coast along, assuming there are no consequences. But the moment you step away, you break that rhythm. You create a silence, an absence, a space that forces them to sit with themselves. And here's the thing, silence can be deafening. It makes people squirm, makes them wonder, it makes them reflect. Discomfort is a powerful teacher. Imagine wearing shoes that are too tight. At first, you try to ignore it. You tell yourself it's fine, that you can handle it. But as the pain builds, you can't help but pay attention. That discomfort demands your awareness. The same thing happens when you disappear. People can no longer avoid the reality of how they behaved when you were around. The absence creates a pressure point, a nagging reminder that something isn't right. And when that discomfort lingers long enough, it pushes them into reflection. Reflection begins with questions. Why aren't you responding? Why aren't you there? Did they say something wrong? Did they push too hard? Did they fail to give back? All of those questions arise not because you spelled it out, but because your silence demanded it. It's uncomfortable to sit in uncertainty, and that's why most people avoid it. But your disappearance removes the option of ignoring it. The very discomfort they feel becomes the mirror they can't look away from. But here's where this gets even more powerful. While they're sitting in their discomfort and reflecting on their actions, you're also reflecting. Your distance isn't just about them, it's about you. For the first time, you have space to think without their influence, without their demands, without their expectations clouding your judgment. You start to reflect on what you accepted that you shouldn't have, on the moments you silenced yourself to keep the peace, on the times you gave more than you received. And as uncomfortable as those realizations might feel at first, they're the exact realizations that free you. This discomfort reflection cycle is necessary because growth rarely happens in comfort. Think about your own life. The times you grew the most weren't the easy times. They were the times when life forced you to stop and ask hard questions. The times when you felt uncomfortable in your job, in your relationship, in your habits, and that discomfort pushed you to reflect, to make a change, to rise higher. The same is true when it comes to disappearing from someone's life. Your absence creates the very discomfort they need to begin reflecting on themselves. Now, not everyone will handle this discomfort the same way. Some people will resist it. They'll get angry instead of reflective. They'll try to blame you rather than look at themselves. That's their defense mechanism. It's easier to point fingers than to face the truth. But even then, the discomfort remains. They can't erase the fact that you're not there anymore. They can't erase the silence. And whether they admit it or not, it gnaws at them. Reflection may take time, but eventually, discomfort always cracks the surface. On the other hand, some people will lean into the discomfort and let it transform them. They'll think back to the times they should have listened better, cared more, valued your presence differently. They'll start reflecting on patterns in their behavior, not just with you, but with others too. And sometimes that reflection leads to real change. Your disappearance may be the catalyst they needed to finally see themselves clearly. For you, the discomfort of pulling away is equally valuable. It's not easy to step back, to stop answering, to break a pattern of being available. That choice can feel uncomfortable too, but that discomfort is what forces your reflection. It makes you look at the life you were living and ask, is this really what I want? Is this really how I deserve to be treated? And in answering those questions, you build strength, boundaries, and clarity. Discomfort and reflection are two sides of the same coin. Without discomfort, there is no reason to reflect. Without reflection, discomfort just festers. But when the two work together, change is inevitable. That's why disappearing is such a powerful act. You're not punishing anyone. You're creating the conditions for growth, both for them and for yourself. So yes, when you disappear, they will feel discomfort. They will fidget in the silence. They will question themselves, maybe even blame themselves. But underneath all of that, they'll reflect. And as uncomfortable as it is, that reflection is the only thing that will open their eyes to who you really were, what you really gave, and why they should have valued you more. And for you, the reflection you gain in that same silence will be the fuel that helps you redefine your worth, rebuild your boundaries, and reclaim your life. When you disappear, one of the most profound things people feel is respect, and it comes directly from the distance you create. At first, they might not understand it. They may be frustrated, even confused. They may try to minimize your absence or pretend it doesn't affect them. But over time, that space you created speaks louder than any words you could have said. It teaches them something that constant explanations or repeated conversations never could. Your boundaries matter, your energy matters, and your presence is not guaranteed. Distance, when used with intention, becomes the loudest form of self-respect, and it commands respect in return. When you are always available, always saying yes, always responding immediately, people unconsciously begin to undervalue your time and your presence. Not because they're inherently bad people, but because that's how human nature works. What is abundant is rarely valued the way it should be. Think about water. If you live somewhere with clean water running endlessly from the tap, you rarely stop to think about how precious it is. But if you're in a place where every drop must be carried from a well, suddenly water is sacred. Your presence works the same way. When you're everywhere all the time, people forget how valuable it is. But the moment you step back, the moment you disappear, the moment you draw a line, they notice. And with that noticing comes respect. Respect through distance isn't about punishing people. It's about teaching them through action. Words are easy to dismiss. You can tell someone, I need space, I need respect, I need balance. But unless your behavior matches your words, they may not take it seriously. When you pull back, when you stop giving unlimited access, when you take control of your availability, you send a message no one can ignore. The distance becomes a boundary that speaks for you. It says, I am not here to be taken for granted. I am not here to be drained. I value myself enough to step away. And even if they don't like it, they respect it. Here's the truth. People respect what they cannot control. As long as you're at their beck and call, as long as you bend over backwards, as long as you say yes when you want to say no, they feel in control of you. And when they feel in control, respect fades. But the second you take that control back, when you decide when to answer, when to engage, when to give your time, you shift the dynamic. Suddenly, they no longer have that control. Suddenly, they realize you are not just an option waiting on the shelf. You are a person with limits, standards, and self-worth. That shift is what creates respect. And let's be clear, this respect is not just something they feel. It's something you begin to feel for yourself. Because when you create distance, you are telling yourself, I matter. My peace matters. My boundaries matter. You stop tolerating less than you deserve, and that decision builds your self-respect like nothing else can. And once you respect yourself enough to disappear when needed, other people have no choice but to rise to that level. Of course, not everyone will handle this well. Some people will resist your distance. They'll push back, guilt trip you, or try to pull you back into old patterns. Why? Because your distance disrupts the comfort they had when you were always available. But even in their resistance, there's an underlying acknowledgement of respect. They wouldn't fight so hard if your presence didn't matter. They wouldn't chase what they didn't value. In their frustration is a hidden form of respect. They know you are no longer theirs to control. And here's the beautiful part. The respect that comes from distance often lasts longer than the temporary respect you get from words or demands. Because distance is action. It's tangible. It's a lived experience that people cannot forget. They'll remember the silence. They'll remember the shift. They'll remember the boundary you created, even if they don't talk about it out loud. And from that point forward, they'll think twice before treating you as if your presence is guaranteed. This is why disappearing is not weakness, and it's not avoidance. It's strength. It's clarity. It's teaching through silence what words failed to explain. Distance forces people to pause, to reevaluate, and to recognize. And while they're busy learning to respect you from afar, you're busy reinforcing, respect for yourself. So yes, when you disappear, they feel confusion, they feel discomfort, but ultimately they feel respect. Respect for the boundary. Respect for the courage it took to step away. Respect for the fact that you know you're worth enough not to hand it out carelessly. And here's the most important thing. Once people respect you, they treat you differently. They value your time more. They listen more. They step up because they know you won't hesitate to step back again if they don't. Distance is your silent teacher. It commands respect without explanation, and the respect that grows from it becomes the foundation for every healthy connection you'll ever build going forward. When you disappear, one of the most powerful things people feel is the shift in control. And this is something most people don't even realize they've handed away until they finally decide to pull it back. When you're constantly available, constantly saying yes, constantly showing up no matter what, you are quietly giving control of your time, your energy, and your emotional bandwidth to everyone else. They get to decide when they call, when they want to see you, when they need you. And without even knowing it, you begin to live in response to their needs instead of your own. But the moment you disappear, the balance changes. The moment you step back, you take back control. And believe me, they feel that shift instantly. People get used to a certain version of you. They get used to you always being there, always picking up, always showing up. It creates an unspoken power dynamic, one where they're in the position of control and you're in the position of compliance. And the hard truth is people rarely respect someone they control. They respect someone who chooses, someone who sets limits, someone who has the strength to say no. That's why when you disappear, it unsettles them. Suddenly, they can't rely on the old dynamic. Suddenly, they're no longer the ones deciding how and when you show up. You've taken that choice back. This shift in control is uncomfortable for them because it disrupts the balance they were benefiting from. If you were always the giver, they were always the receiver. If you were always adjusting, they were always comfortable. When you step away, they lose that comfort. They can no longer predict your actions. They can no longer take for granted your availability. And that unpredictability forces them to confront a new reality, one where you decide what you give and when you give it. But the shift in control isn't just about them, it's about you. Because when you pull back, you reclaim something far more valuable than their attention. You reclaim yourself. You stop waiting on others to decide your worth. You stop depending on their calls, their validation, their recognition to feel important. You begin to decide for yourself. You get to choose who has access to your energy. You get to decide when to say yes and when to say no. That control is empowering, and once you taste it, you'll never want to go back. Think about it. How many times have you felt drained because you were living on someone else's terms? Saying yes when you wanted to say no, showing up when you were exhausted, giving when you had nothing left to give. That's what happens when the control doesn't belong to you. And that's why disappearing is so transformative. It's the act of saying, I'm not living in reaction anymore. I'm choosing. And that choice puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. Now, when people feel this shift in control, they may react in different ways. Some will panic. They'll try harder to reach you. They'll get frustrated that you're not responding the way you used to. Others will become curious, even cautious, realizing they no longer have the influence they once did. And some, the ones who truly care, will adjust. They'll meet you in this new balance with more respect, more appreciation, more understanding, because they see that you're no longer handing your power away for free. This is where the shift in control becomes permanent. Once you establish it, once you set that precedent, the dynamic of every relationship changes. People begin to understand that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. And when access becomes a privilege, it's treated with far more respect. That's the beauty of disappearing. It resets the balance. It shows people that you are not at their disposal, and that realization creates a healthier, stronger foundation for every interaction going forward. And here's something important to remember. Taking back control doesn't mean cutting everyone off or disappearing forever. It means being intentional. It means deciding when to engage, when to pull back, and when to protect your energy. It means living on your terms instead of theirs. And that's a kind of power that transforms not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. So when you disappear, don't underestimate the shift that happens. People feel it deeply. They sense that they are no longer the ones calling the shots. They recognize that you have reclaimed your energy, your time, your worth. And whether they admit it or not, they respect it. Because control is never truly respected until it's in the hands of the person it belongs to, you. That's the gift of disappearing. It's not just absence, it's recalibration. It's you taking the wheel back. And once you experience that shift, once you realize the strength of living on your terms, you'll never let anyone else drive your life again. When you disappear, the most important thing that happens is growth and self-discovery. A lot of people misunderstand this. They think disappearing is only about teaching others a lesson or showing them what they lost. But the deeper truth is, disappearing is really about you. It's about stepping away from the noise long enough to hear your own voice again. It's about creating space to understand who you are, what you need, and where you're going. And while others may feel your absence, you're the one who benefits the most from it because the silence gives you room to grow. When you're constantly available to everyone else, it's easy to lose track of yourself. You get so wrapped up in their needs, their expectations, their demands that you forget your own. You start to confuse being needed with being valued. You start to mistake constant activity with actual progress. But the moment you disappear, the moment you stop running after everyone else, you suddenly have to face yourself. That moment can feel uncomfortable at first, but it's the doorway to growth. Because growth never happens in the noise, it happens in the quiet. Self-discovery begins when you're no longer defined by how others see you. Think about it. As long as you're always there for everyone else, they're shaping your identity with their labels, their judgments, their treatment of you. But when you step back, all of that influence fades. You begin to ask yourself, who am I when no one is pulling at me? What do I want when I'm not trying to please anyone else? What makes me feel alive when the expectations go silent? These questions are the foundation of self-discovery, and you can't ask them, let alone answer them, until you disappear long enough to separate your voice from the noise of others. Growth also happens because distance gives you perspective. When you're in the middle of something, it's hard to see it clearly. You justify things. You normalize behaviors that aren't good for you. You convince yourself that being drained is just part of life. But the moment you step away, the picture becomes clearer. You start to notice patterns you couldn't see before. You realize how much you were giving without receiving. You recognize how much you were tolerating just to avoid conflict. That clarity is painful at first, but it's also the spark that fuels growth. You can't change what you refuse to see. Disappearing forces you to finally see. And as you see, you begin to rebuild. You rebuild your boundaries. You rebuild your sense of worth. You rebuild your priorities. You begin to set new standards for who gets your time and who doesn't, for what kind of energy you allow in your life and what kind you won't. That rebuilding is growth in its purest form, because growth is not just about adding new things to your life. It's also about subtracting the things that no longer serve you. Disappearing gives you the courage to subtract, and subtraction creates the space for something better.